This program is brought to you in partnership with the Immigrant Legal Center.
Welcome to Legal USA, a monthly program produced by New Americans Media in partnership with the Immigrant Legal Center, both of Omaha, Nebraska. We would like to stress that the information provided here is not intended to be legal advice. Viewers should consult a qualified immigration attorney to obtain legal advice on their issue or problem. Today's focus of Legal USA is family-based immigration. Elena Reveiz is a child and family attorney with the Immigrant Legal Center and joins us today in the studio. Thank you, Elena, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start. Family-based immigration is the main category that brings immigrants to the United States currently. When did the law change? When and why did the law change to make family-based the main category?
Well, the history of immigration has changed since the beginning of the United States. Up until 1920, there was quite a bit of immigration. But then starting in the 20s, there was a lot of anti-immigration sentiment. So between 1920 and 1965, not very many people immigrated to the United States. The criteria for allowing immigrants to come in was based on national origin and race. So that meant that most of the people that were coming in, and there were not very many immigrants during that time, but most of them that were coming in were actually from Northern and Western Europe. So in 1965, it was during the Civil Rights Movement, and that's actually when a lot of laws were changing in general, and they took a look at the immigration system and they decided it needed an update. So this was during the Lyndon B. Johnson administration, and they signed into law the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Okay.
And that act changed, it did away with the national origin and the race criteria. And the focus now for immigration was based on reuniting families.
The families.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was reuniting families and also allowing skilled laborers to come in.
Family-based and employment-based.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in order for the family base to work, they had to prioritize different family relationships.
Exactly. That would be my next question. What is family-based category immigration? What does it entitle? Who is eligible and who can apply under this category?
So the first category are adult unmarried son or daughters of U.S. citizens.
Of U.S. citizens.
Of U.S.
so
citizens.
The petitioner, the person that files, needs to be a U.S. citizen.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That's
okay.
right.
Mm-hmm. And in that category, you said spouses?
So if you look over here, it defines immediate relatives from preference categories.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate relatives mean they don't have to wait in any kind of line. They get a visa immediately. The preference categories, they have to wait in a line.
Okay.
Okay, so the relationships that shouldn't have to wait, the government thinks they shouldn't have to wait, are spouses of U.S. citizens.
Okay.
Okay. And then minor children, unmarried and under the age of 21, of U.S. citizens.
Okay.
Okay. And then parents of adult U.S. citizens, and the U.S. citizen has to be over the age of 21 to petition for their parents.
For their parents, okay. When you apply for your spouse and children, do you apply for at the same time? You filed at the same time? If I am the U.S. citizen and I would like to bring my spouse and my kids, do I apply for them at the same time, or the spouse goes first, then kids come next?
You can apply for them all at the same time. But they all need different petitions. But you can apply. You can first bring your spouse, and then your kids, or first your kids, then your spouse.
Okay. And can you group spouses, children, and parents in the same application?
You can't put them on the same application. For immediate relatives, you can't put them on the same application. They all get their own application.
Okay.
But you can file at the same time.
At the same time. Okay. All right. That's the immediate relatives.
That's immediate relatives.
Okay.
Exactly.
And you said that there is no waiting here. The visa is available immediately.
Well, immediately doesn't really mean immediately.
Okay.
It can take up to 1 year, just because Your petition has to be processed and approved, and then just bringing the relative to the United States can take some time.
Okay.
But you don't have to wait for a certain date like the other visa categories you do.
Exactly, because now that I'm understanding more than about immigration, 1 year doesn't sound that bad.
No.
Actually. All right, let's move to the second category, preference categories. Is that right?
Right. So the preference category, it means they have to wait until a visa is available.
Okay.
And they're ranked. So the first preference category is adult unmarried son or daughters of U.S. citizens. So I think the government, they just assume that they're adults. They can handle being away from their parents longer than children under 21.
Okay.
And then the second preference category belongs to permanent residents.
Okay.
So people who are not yet citizens, but they could be here indefinitely under a special status. And so the first preference category for permanent residents, or also known as green card holders, it's for spouses of permanent residents and unmarried children of permanent residents.
Okay.
So just to simplify, a green card holder, they're here alone and they want to bring their spouse and children, so they have to apply for them and they have to wait until a visa is available. And typically, it can be 2 years for their spouse to come. It's not immediate.
All right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And then the third preference category is reserved again for U.S. citizens. And that's for married adult son or daughters of U.S. citizens.
All right. Mm-hmm.
And then the final category is for siblings of adult U.S. citizens.
Siblings of adults. Okay. So there are different preferences for married and unmarried children older than 21 years old.
Exactly.
Okay. Because that means that they can bring their spouses as well. So if I am married, I'm older than 21 years, and my parents are in the United States, U.S. citizens, when they file for me, do they file just for me personally or for my spouse and my kids if I have a family?
The petition is just for you.
Just for me. And then I can bring my family over. Is that right?
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's the main chart. Okay.
And let me just clarify one thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are under the age of 21 and you are married, you are not a child, so it kicks you into the lower category.
Okay.
Just,
clarification here.
Right.
Okay, yeah, because
they're not dependent on the parents anymore. So.
Okay. What is visa cap, and what are the current quotas for this category, family-based category?
Okay. So in order to explain that, to get into a category, the way this all starts is the U.S. citizen or the green card holder has to submit an application on behalf of the immigrant, the daughter or the spouse or the sibling. And this application is called the I-130.
Okay.
Okay?
So that's the form that needs to be in that folder.
That's the form.
Mm-hmm.
And then once, I can talk more about that form later, but once that form is received by immigration, it's stamped with a date. And that date is called the priority date.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So when you receive the receipt, after you filed that, you look at the priority date, and then you're able to look up on the visa bulletin, and you can see what petitions immigration are which ones they're reviewing at this time in your category.
Okay.
So
and where can they find that bulletin? Is there a specific website that they can go to?
They can, and the bulletin is updated every month. Mid-month you can see, so May bulletin is already out, and you can see which applications they're already processing.
Okay. Would USCIS be a good source of information where they can find
the Department of State.
The Department of State.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's under the Department of State,
It
and
is.
they can check there the progress of their cases, right?
Right.
Okay.
So
what
was the
question? We were talking about the priorities. We covered that. Now I wanted to know about the visa caps and what are the current quotas.
So I can tell you how many visas are issued in each category each year.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I could show you the visa bulletin, it kind of gives you a better idea
Okay.
of what we're looking at.
Okay.
So let's say if you want to choose a scenario, F1, we're looking at unmarried sons or daughters of U.S. citizens.
That's the
Let's
F1,
say
okay?
you're petitioning for your son or daughter.
Okay.
Okay, and let's say we filed the petition just last week. So we have a priority date of April something 2019. Okay, and let's say you're from Mexico. Okay.
Yep.
And so you would go to the F1 category, you would go over to Mexico, and then you can see what year they're processing.
Okay.
So right now they're looking at petitions that were filed August 8th, 1997.
All right. I understand.
So that shows you kind of how long you'll have to wait.
Okay. And this is a bulletin where they can get the information. This is the visa bulletin that you were referring to.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay.
So if we're looking at, so just to give you more examples, let's look at a permanent resident wants to file for their spouse. And let's say they're from, so they have these countries.
India.
Okay, it's from India, and then they have all other countries. So you go to F2A, you go over to India, and they're processing applications from March 2017.
17.
So it's like a
Okay.
2-year wait.
A 2-year wait. Okay. And this long wait, and especially in the case I see it, and Mexico, I read
It's an
now
extremely
that
long wait.
exactly, and that is related to the visa caps. Is that right? There is a certain number of visas that can be issued under the entire category, and we're not talking for the subcategories or for the family-based immigration, right?
Exactly.
That has created the problems.
There's a huge backlog. And the backlog is most apparent when you look up the category F4, which is brothers and sisters, adult brothers of U.S. citizens. So F4, if we look at Mexico, somebody's petitioning for their sibling, they're processing forms February 1998, I guess.
Yeah.
So
the
it's
Philippines is even more, 1996.
96. So.
Okay. All right. Now, a question that I have before we move, what should be in that petition? Should the U.S. citizen who is petitioning, or the permanent resident for that matter, should they be in the United States, or they can be in their country of origin or somewhere else and bring the spouse or children over, or their beneficiary person over?
Okay, so the petitioner is the U.S. citizen or the permanent resident, and the beneficiary is the foreign national.
Okay.
So the beneficiary can either be in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. to do the process. Typically, the petitioner is in the U.S.
In the U.S.
But I'm sure that you can do it outside of the U.S. You can file all those forms.
Yeah, if you are a worker and you're going
Right.
somewhere under a contract, the process will go on, although for working purposes you are living abroad at this particular time. Okay. Now, I would like to understand now, okay, I am a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Or a permanent resident. I have finally decided to bring over my spouse and my family and parents for that matter. Now, I want to know what should be in that folder.
Well, it depends on who you are. Are you a U.S. citizen or are you a permanent resident? Because let's say you're a U.S. citizen and your spouse is here and they've entered legally. So if they didn't enter legally, things are different. Or if they're out of the country, things are different. So let's say you're a U.S. citizen, you're petitioning for your spouse who's here, who entered legally.
Okay.
So you would file this 2 forms together, the I-130 and then adjustment of status form. The I-130 is what gives you the priority date, but since you're a U.S. citizen, you don't need to even look at this chart because it's a spouse. Yeah. So for that, you would file the I-130. I think the fee is $535. You need passport photos. For this particular form, you're trying to prove to immigration your status as well as your relationship to that foreign national.
Okay.
So it's your birth certificate, his birth certificate, and then your marriage certificate.
All right.
Okay.
And here in the United States,
Yeah.
when both are here in the United States, but one is a U.S. citizen and the other one is not a U.S. citizen,
Right.
but came over legally.
Right.
Right? Okay. Now, the case when U.S. citizen is the petitioner, the beneficiary is in the United States but did not come over legally. What happens? It was undocumented.
So if that's the case, you should definitely talk to an immigration attorney because there's an extra step that you have to go through.
Okay.
But also, I should caution, before you file anything with immigration, you should be sure that you know the immigration history of your spouse.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people, they don't realize it, but they've been deported and they don't even know it. And so once you file the I-130, you're kind of alerting the immigration, here I am, here my spouse is, and I want a visa for them eventually. And if they have a prior deportation order, you're just alerting the government, this person is here, and then they'll schedule an interview and they'll probably be detained.
And how do you discover that history?
Well, that's why you have to have you have to ask them for sure, and you can also do a background check.
A background check.
But that can take a while.
Okay. And where can you do the background check?
Well, most immigration attorneys will do it for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the legal counseling, it really becomes important at this point.
For sure.
Right? And so that's the case when the U.S. beneficiary or U.S. citizen applies for the beneficiary that is here, but it crossed
entered
illegally or undocumented, crossed the border, right?
Right.
Let's say, okay,
and there's more to it there than that, but yeah.
Okay, but let's simplify it to this case. So, okay, the person knows that the spouse didn't enter legally. There is something wrong with that. Is there an option to continue the process?
There is an option.
Apply for documents?
There is an option, and that typically, if there's no serious criminal record, if all they've done is crossed the border undocumented, then there is a waiver for that. Okay. So what you would do is you would first file the first petition, the I-130, and then once that's approved, then you ask the government to forgive them for crossing illegally.
Okay.
So you have to show the government that you, as the U.S. citizen, will suffer extreme hardship if this person has to go back to their country and can't come back in. Okay. So it's discretionary.
Okay.
So that waiver can take, in the past it took up to 8 months. Now it can take even longer.
Longer than that, right?
Once that's approved, then the immigrant will have to leave and go back to their country and then consular process in. It's kind of a symbolic entry. They have to enter legally. Oh,
so the spouse or the beneficiary has to leave the United States, go in their country of origin, and apply for visa there, and get that through the embassy, right?
Right.
Okay, and bring it over, right? Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
And then, and then once they come to the U.S., then they're granted the green card and they don't need a work permit, and you can get a social security number whenever you apply for one. Okay, and we'll go over it.
Sure.
When I applied for my green card, I remember that the file or the folder or the application had my medical history in it too. Yeah. Is that part of the application process? It is. You need a medical exam, and you also need a criminal history check where you've lived since you were 15 years old. Okay. And those two expire, so you have to time them right, because let's say you were granted the waiver and you've left the country to come in symbolically. You have to have an immigrant visa interview at the embassy in the country wherever you're from, and they interview you and they look at your medical exam and they look at your criminal history, and then they have to approve you and let you come in. So that's where your medical exam probably came in. And I know that they were very detailed about vaccination. Exactly. Yeah. Some vaccines are required, like the HPV, they're required. Yeah, I think I was missing one. I had to take one, or maybe not. I can't recall, but I know that there was something there. Okay. Now another question, it's making sense right now, the categories and the preferences. We talked about how long does it usually take for a petition to go through. We said that for the U.S. citizen, it takes up to 8 months, you said, or a year to get to bring the spouse and children over. Right. But for the other categories, takes up to 2 years, or in the case of F4. Yeah, so it's not priority, so they're not
yeah.
going to look at your case as fast, you know.
Yeah. Now, in the case of brothers and sisters, I would like to elaborate that on the subcategory a little bit more.
Okay.
Is there a limit of number of people, and that's actually a question that we received, is there a limit of number of relatives that you are allowed to bring to the United States?
So they have to fall within one of those categories. You can't apply for your grandparents, your cousins, but if you have 10 siblings and you qualify and you're able to apply for them, you can apply for them.
You can.
You can, but you have to provide an affidavit, a financial affidavit showing how much you make, and you have to show that you're kind of responsible for them financially once they come here.
And let's clarify this. If you want to file a petition for a spouse or a relative or a sister and brother, how much does it cost on average, the whole thing, putting the file together, application, the fees for the forms, on average, how much does one application, one petition cost?
Well, if you're asking just about the filing fees,
yes.
So I would say close to $3,500 for filing fees alone.
For one petition?
For one petition.
So for a family of 4, with one U.S. citizen here and 3 people to bring over from abroad, that would be 3 by the 3,500, is that right?
It's an estimate, but I'm also counting in like the medical exam and
yes,
all of that.
Yes,
right.
It's for one
for
petition.
one person. Yeah.
Okay, it's not cheap.
No, and that's without an attorney.
Yeah, because not including the attorney fees. Those are just the forms.
Right.
Okay. Now, how about the step siblings? Are they eligible?
They are, if the step-sibling relationship was established prior to your sibling turning 18. Does that make sense? So let's say your parents remarried, your parents married before the person who you're petitioning for turned 18. So the relationship was established before they turned 18. 18,
okay. Now, if it is available, what percentage of immigration is produced by the above mentioned category? And I'm referring to sisters and brothers. Do we have that number? I know that the visa cap right now for the family-based immigration is at 480,000 visas a year, if I'm not wrong. And the priority goes to the first one, to the immediate relatives. And then we have the other categories, and one of them is brothers and sisters. Just out of curiosity, do we have the number? How much of immigration is produced by F4 category?
Of F4? You know, I don't know the percentage, but I can tell you, I looked it up and it says 65,000 visas per year are dedicated to that category.
That category, and that's for the entire world.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters. Okay, and I see that you have numbers there for each category. Can you tell us, on average, or this numbers refer to last year's numbers?
To last year's numbers.
Can you please tell me? So, under preferred unmarried children, we had 23,400.
Right.
Last year. So which one was the biggest category that brought the most immigrants to the United States?
It looks like spouses and unmarried children under 21 of permanent residents.
Of permanent residents. Okay.
And also remember that they're waiting 2 years, so they filed the application 2 years ago.
Okay. All right.
And this says 65,000 for siblings of U.S. citizens. I don't see very many siblings petitioning for their siblings, so I don't know how many of those are actually used. So.
But that was the cap, right? Right. But we don't know if we have hit that quota last year. Okay, so that was just the gap. Okay, now very few practical questions. You said that once you arrive, you can work, right? You have the right to work. You come to the United States, everything went smoothly. You got the visa. You're granted the permission to enter as a green card first. You cannot be a citizen. You do not come over as a U.S. citizen, right?
Right.
Okay. you come over as a green card holder.
Right.
And by default, you have the right to work immediately. Is that right?
That's right.
How about the Social Security?
So you would apply for that with the Social Security Administration.
And that's going to be available right away here,
Right.
Yeah, in my case, will work very fast.
Okay.
Yeah. How about children? Let's say that parents come over in the middle of the year, bring their the kids with, or mom or dad comes over in the middle of the year, 2 kids of school age. Can they enter school right there?
They can. Schools can't deny a child based on their immigration status.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think they even question their immigration status.
You're just enrolled.
It's just like any other child, yeah.
Okay. And my final question. Today, I hear a lot of discussion regarding the family-based immigration, called many times the family chain immigration. My question would be, you described a little how it went, the history 1920, 65, and from 1965 to now, and now there is this push to change or to even stop the family-based immigration, the family chain. What did America lose or gain by having family-based immigration as the main category that brought immigrants to the country?
Well, some people might argue that it lost skilled laborers, but there is a category for skilled laborers. I think what 1965 did for immigration was it increased immigration overall, and it opened up immigration to Africa, to the Middle East, and to Asia, to the countries that were never that people from there weren't coming before 1965. So I guess it's diversified the U.S. more, and more people have immigrated. I know people are talking about merit-based immigration, and that would be the government would look to see how many languages you speak or how much education you have, and you would get priority if you spoke more, or if you had more education.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Elena.
Yeah, thank you.
This was Legal USA for this month. Next month, we will cover removal and deportation proceedings. If you have questions, please email us at legal@newamericansmedia.com by May 22nd. You will receive your answers on June 3rd. Thank you for watching. I am Enkela Vehbiu.